like you said, my name's Anthony Cozzello, and my family and a core group of, 30 or so people started this movement called Revolution 10 years ago. This fall, we'll celebrate 10 years, which is just unbelievable to think about. So let me introduce you to my family that was part of that journey, at least most of them. One of them wasn't yet part of it, but this is my family. My wife, Shauna, and I, we will celebrate 18 years of marriage this October 12th. So I think this Valentine's Day was our 20th or something, I'm not sure. And then our oldest child, Aspen, our oldest girl, she's an 8th grader. She loves having sleepovers with her friends at our house. I don't like those sleepovers as much, especially on Saturday nights. But and then Jake, and our oldest son, is 12. He's a 6th grader, and he loves sports, loves baseball, basketball. Go Hoosiers. Okay, all right, okay, yeah. And then Bentley, our youngest, who has come along in the Revolution journey, is our free-spirited, ninja-chopping, Marvel superhero fanatic kindergartner. So just a little bit about Revolution. Like I said, 10 years, we've kind of started this movement, and God's just kind of breathed on it and done his thing in Logansport, our hometown. My wife and I both graduated high school and moved back to plant there. And just something cool, 18 months ago, we moved into our first owned building. We'd been in lease space ever since the beginning, and so we bought the former Staples building in our city that went out in 2014, and it had to go through all these different things, and it was just a God story for another Sunday. I can share that story, but so we've been in there 18 months, and we've just seen God, like not just over these 18 months, but over the entire span of this movement. We've seen him like just connect people with Revolution that had given up on church, or just didn't see church as relevant anymore, or why does church need to be part of my life, or Jesus, and just so many people have come in and found faith or reignited their faith, and I know that's the stories already coming out of Bridgeway Church, and maybe that's your stories. I'm speaking it right now, and as you continue to move forward, I know that's going to be the stories that you get to celebrate. And like Joel said, we've known each other for about 12 years, and I think really developed a friendship in the last 5 as we've been in this network of churches and kind of hanging out together, this network called New Thing. One of the things I love about Joel's story is he's from Kokomo. Like, he has roots here. He loves this community, and I love that he's planting in his hometown, because that means he's going to stick it out through the good times and the tough times, because there's some tough times in church planting. So I'm just so thankful that he has decided to do this work here, and that so many of you have joined him on this work, because I hope you realize, Bridgeway Church is a movement. You're starting a movement in Howard County that's going to change this community. Like, Howard County's not going to be the same community this time next year that it is right now, because of the impact Bridgeway is going to have on Howard County in these next 12 months. And I believe that with everything in me. I hope you believe that. Like, God is going to use this community of faith to change this community called Howard County. So I'm just honored to be here, like I said. And you've been in this series, All the Feels, where you've just been talking about these very elusive things called emotions, and how to uncover them and figure them out and control these things called emotions. And you've talked about a lot of things in this series. You've talked about the history of emojis. I learned so much about emojis listening to the podcast from the last couple of weeks. Sarah McLachlan dog commercials, you talked about that. Pistol Pete Maravich had a mention in this series, and then 10 things that grind Joel's gears last Sunday. I related to so many of those things, and I thought, man, you've had so much fun in this series already, and I love to have fun within the talk and just as I'm presenting information and stuff. And so it's Valentine's Day weekend, so I thought, well, I'm going to give you my top 5 all the feels moments from romantic movies. According to me, and you might disagree with this list, you might have some different ones. None of these top 5 might be in your top 5, but according to me, the top 5 all the feels moments from romantic movies. Are you ready? Number 5, and it has to be in there because this is my wife's favorite movie of all time, The Notebook. It gets number 5. It's last on my list. Just that scene where Noah's like, I wrote you 365 letters. It wasn't over. It still isn't over. And then this happens, and just, some of you got goosebumps just hearing me say those words from The Notebook. Number 4, and I thought about moving this up a little further because it's so good. Number 4, The Wedding Singer. Adam Sandler. The moment on the plane where he gets the guitar out and Billy Idol's there and he sings, I want to grow old with you. And it's so good. I sang that to my wife on our 10th anniversary. It was epic, as you could tell, I'm sure. Okay, number 3, we're going way back for this one, from the movie Say Anything. First service was way more with me on number 3. Who knows what song was playing in this boom box? Anybody know? Yes, In Your Eyes, Peter Gabriel. Let's just sing it together. We ready? I'm kidding. We're not doing that. Okay, number 2. It has to be on there because it's like top 5 grossing movies of all time. Titanic. I'll never let you go, Jack. You know how that turned out, right? And then number 1, you know what number 1 is. It has to be like the most famous line from any romantic comedy ever. Let's just say it together. You had me at hello. And we've used it, and it's just such a great line. So, but anyway, really all the Feel series, it's been about emotions and controlling them and uncovering them. And Joel shared this quote from Dan Allender the last 2 weeks. It just really connected with me, and I'm going to remember this quote for a long time. Emotions are like messengers from the front lines of the battle zone. Our tendency is to kill the messenger, but we need to listen carefully if we want to win the battle. So you've talked about 2 of those messengers from the front lines, guilt and anger last week. And today we're going to tackle this third emotion, or you might even say this third attitude called greed. And there's the greed emoji right there. It's the best emoji I could find for greed. And before we kind of dive into what greed is and where it comes from and how to uncover it and process it and control it, all those kind of things, I want to start with a question that I hope can bring us all together as we kind of go on this journey. Here's the question. Why does God allow people to gain riches? Why does God allow people to gain riches? And I get, maybe you're here today and you're like, oh, I'm not even sure I believe the question. Like, I earn my money, man. Like, I work hard for my money. I put in 40, 50, 60 hours of work for that paycheck. So I don't know if I even buy the question. And I totally get where you're coming from if that's kind of where you're at with this. So let me just kind of share where I'm at with this whole idea of God and income and stuff. Like, I believe that everything I've been given is a blessing from God. That's where I've landed as I've thought about it. And there's this truth toward the end of Scripture written by a guy named James. He was the half-brother of Jesus that believed that his brother was the Son of God after the resurrection. Just this crazy thing happened. But James said this, every good and perfect gift is from God. And I just believe that. Like, everything I have been given is a gift from God. Like, I didn't earn it. I don't deserve it. Even just the opportunity to be a pastor. I have to put work into this, and I have to do my part. But God has given me the gifts to communicate and lead in different things. And so it's all by God's grace that I even get to do what I do and earn some sort of income from it. So I just consider it all like a blessing from God. But if you can't quite get there, maybe we could find some common ground with this. Because think about this. If there is a God, and God's in control of this planet we live on, then any money we earn, maybe that's kind of where you land, or any money we're blessed with, that's kind of where I land, God allowed us to gain those riches. Okay, if there is a God and God's in control, then whether you fall in the earned camp or the blessed camp or a mixture of both, which is probably more where I'm at, God allows us to have what we have. If God's in control, right? So hopefully this question can give us common ground as we move forward, no matter where you're at with faith and God and all those things. So let's throw the question again on the screen. Why does God allow people to gain riches? And if you look at most people depicted on television, you look at your own neighbors, friends, family, probably your own life. This might be the answer you come up with. The observational answer, we'll call it, is that God allows people to gain riches so they can have more. And even among Christ followers, I think this is generally true. And let me share what I mean by that. I'm going to give us a pretty convicting statistic, I think. The average American Christian gives about 1.4% of their income to the church. In contrast, stay with me, okay? In contrast, the average interest paid each year by Americans is 14% of their income. So think about this. 14% of our income goes to pay interest on the more stuff that we buy that we hadn't even gained the riches yet to purchase. 1.4% is given to and through the movement that Jesus established to change the world. Like the only movement that's going to last past this world, right? 1.4%. And 1.4% is so much lower than pretty much everything else in our budget. If you operate off a budget, probably everything else in that budget is above that 1.4%. For example, the average household in America spends $5,300 per year on entertainment expenses. And you might be way under that. You might be over that. I don't know. That's just average. And for the majority of homes, sure, that's way more than that 1.4%. And nothing wrong with entertainment, okay? That's absolutely not the point of the talk today. Nothing wrong with stuff. Nothing wrong with bigger house, car, although that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to help us see is that the normal American thought process behind money is that more is always for me. The observational answer to why God allows people to gain wealth, if we just look around at the world, neighbors, friends, probably our own life, is so we can have more. Like when we get our tax check, we tend to think, now I can finally get that new 4K TV I've been drooling over in the Best Buy commercial. Finally, like if you're someone that has the opportunity to get a tax check, you spend that thing before you even get it most of the time, right? Like you've charged it and you figured out a way where I'm going to get the tax check in time so I don't have to accrue any interest. I'll pay it off. Like and you don't have to nudge anybody. We know who we are, okay? Like if you get a bonus at work, you tend to think, well, now we can go on that vacation we've been talking about. Like that's our first thought. Or if you own your own business and maybe you make a few good decisions in the business that bring some more revenue into the business, which brings maybe some more income your way, some of our first thoughts are, no, well, now we can put that addition on the house that we've been talking about. And even debt is driven by this more is always for me mindset. Like again, we don't even gain the riches before we get the more. Like more vehicle options, technology, American Eagle, Target, Gap, TJ Maxx. I can keep going. I'll hit it. We'll figure it out. And man, this was a huge issue for my wife and I when we first started adulting. Who remembers when you first started adulting in the room? Raise your hand if you remember those days. Some of you are in those days right now. Like you're just kind of getting into that world of adulting. And so a little bit of our story. We were married when I was 20. My wife was 21, so we got married really young. And I couldn't even book the cabin in Gatlinburg for our honeymoon. That's how embarrassing it was. My wife, it all had to be under my wife's name. She had to get the keys, and so it was just a little embarrassing. But we had no self-control early in our marriage, and we fully bought into this more is always for me lie. We bought our first house. We found out Menards offered this 0% interest for 12 months card. So we decided to get one of those cards, remodel our entire kitchen in hopes that we would pay it off in 12 months. Guess what? That didn't happen. Value City offered this 0% for 6 months on furniture. Value City Furniture. Hey, we're doing a good thing. It's Value City. Thought we could pay that. Then we found out Lowe's also offered that same kind of card that Menards did. And I don't know how they approved it, but they did. And we got a 0% interest card from Lowe's, maxed that thing out on our bathroom. And we're about 3 years into our marriage when we're working with this debt consolidation company to put everything into one payment in hopes we could get out of debt within 3 to 5 more years. We didn't even have money for the more we wanted, but we bought this lie. And see, very rarely does someone emerge in our culture that goes against this more is always for me mindset. Someone that thinks, no, more is opportunity for margin. And here's what margin is. Margin is the gap between what we make and what we earn, or what we make and what we spend, that allows us to be creative and generous with our resources. Like when you get margin, that's when you start thinking clearly and Christ-like about why was I even given resources in the first place? Like what would be even the purpose of this, that God allowing me to have this? Like when you get margin, that's when you might even have the opportunity to flip around that interest 14% and 1.4% generosity thing. But it's so rare for someone, like when your wealth increases, you enjoy a little bit more than you did in the past. Quality of life elevates some. But you continue to build your margin more than your mattress brand. Like it's just rare to think that way. Like you continue to build your margin, not your car options. It's just a very uncommon way in America of operating financially, which brings us to our next important question. Why is that uncommon? Like what is that thing in us that drives us to live a marginless life financially and think that more is always for me? And this is a part of the talk where I might lose you, okay? Hopefully not. That's greed. That's what that is. Like greed isn't just some attitude or emotion that's reserved for the top 1% of wage earners in the world. Greed isn't just Scrooge McDuck swimming around in a gold coin warehouse, right? I mean, greed is that thing in me. It's that thing in you that promotes the message, more is always for me. Doesn't matter how much money you make, how much money you have, we all struggle with this thing. This thought of, it's my money, it's for me. Like, and I don't have the money yet, but I still want this for me, so I'm going to go in debt to get it. And I just got to raise it work, so I'm going to get this for me now. We all have some of that in us. So back to the question I started with, Why does God allow people to gain riches? Observational answer, so we can have more. More is always for me. Well, here's what's interesting, though. Like, God inspired this church planter named Paul to pen some words to a church 2,000 years ago that spoke directly to the question we started with today. I mean, it is a direct, practical answer to why does God allow people to gain riches. So here's what he says through this guy named Paul. 2 Corinthians 9:11, he says, you will be made rich in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion. And through us, your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God. I mean, direct answer, right? You will be made rich so that the purpose of you can be generous. You are given riches, wealth, money, giftedness to pursue a job, a career. You're given all that so that you can be generous. And by the way, if you struggle with this word rich, like, well, I don't really have to listen to this verse because I'm not rich. Well, let me help us with that a little bit too as Americans. If you make $40,000 or more a year gross income, you are among the top 4% of wage earners in the world. So I don't know where you fall in that. There's someone in the world that would look at your life and be blown away by how amazing you have it. Some of us, after this 11 o'clock service today, we will get to go to a location where we're able to pay someone to prepare a hot meal for us at one of these places called a restaurant. Over half of the world lives in extreme poverty, doesn't know where their next meal is coming from. Here's a stat that might give you a little more of a picture of how rich we are. 6.8 million teenagers in America have their own car. And that's the scariest stat I've shared all day, right? But I try to see the rich factor in this statistic too. 92% of the world's population doesn't even own a single car. Like, we're rich. We're blessed. And knowing this, it shouldn't bring any guilt our way. We should be grateful for this. But knowing this, it should give us a desire to at least think about these words that are spoken into our lives, into our world, that you will be made rich in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion. And just imagine for a second if we believe this. Like, if we understood that we are made rich in every way so we can be generous. Like, I was given this raise so I could be more generous with my money. That's the ultimate purpose of God allowing me to have this. Like, I got this bonus check so I can help fund this cause. That's the bigger purpose of why I was able to receive this. As I gain more income, I see it as an opportunity to be more generous. Instead of just upping our living arrangements, getting the new car, buying more toys, nothing wrong with any of those things. That's not what I'm saying. In controlled doses. But what if we really believe that the reason God has allowed me to acquire more is so I can give more away? Like, this financial principle just lived in this community of faith right here, I believe could change Kokomo. Like, if the capital C church just received this one spiritual truth from Paul in this letter, just this one thing, capital C church around the world, this would change our entire world, friends. If we just understood this one thing, that God allows me to gain riches so I can give more. Not so I can have more. And nothing wrong with having a little more square footage, a little nicer car, a little bigger TV, whatever it is. But that's not the bigger purpose as to why God allows me to gain wealth. Whether you believe you've earned it, blessed with it, somewhere in the middle of all that. The reason people are allowed to acquire wealth is so that they can be generous. That's the purpose. But maybe you're like, but why would I do this? Like, maybe you're not sure about all this faith and Bible, and like just because like this verse says so, like, why? This is hard. This is different than anything I've thought about financially. But why would I want to do this? Why would I want to be more generous? And I get that. I get that thought. So here's why I think living this way is the best way to live. And no matter where you're at with faith, I think we can kind of be on the same page here. And if I lost you somewhere with Adam Sandler, Wedding Singer, and you've been replaying those clips from the movie, if you come back right here and you get the rest of this, it was worth being here, okay? Because there's something, listen, here's why I would challenge you to at least try this, living this verse in Corinthians. Because there's something we all want more than money. And maybe you're like, I'm not sure about that. I'm a pretty big fan of old dead presidents on green paper, Anthony. I mean, money is a pretty awesome thing, and I get there are some people in this world that are just so consumed by greed, and it's all about money. Yes, But I believe for everyone that's maybe late 20s or later in life, has a couple kids, life's a little bit in perspective, and maybe you're not there yet. And if you could get this like before, like college years and young adult years or teenage years, if you get this now, it'll change your life. But if life's a little bit in perspective for us, there's something we want more than money, friends. And here's that something. Contentment. I just want to be happy, right? I want to be content. That's all the feels we want to feel right there. That's the emotional state that we're chasing after, and that's ultimately why we give into the temptation of greed, right? Like more is always for me because that's when I'll finally be happy. That's the American dream. That's where we find it, right? The pursuit of happiness, the family, the white picket fence, the house, the car, the garage. Like that's where happiness is found. I just want to be happy and content. And we think feeling content comes from getting more of what I want. I'm not content because I don't have it yet, right? Like I'm not content because I don't have a 70-inch TV. Like I just have a 60-inch. And every time I go to Walmart, they have that end cap with 70-inch TVs and the big sale sign. And like, I'm not content because I don't have that yet. If I had that, I would be content until they brought the 80-inch out. And then we'd have to think about it again. But I'm not content because if I had that, that's when I'd be content. Or I'm not content because I don't have the new car. I just have this old car, and like I want leather interior, and I want heated seats and the little air holes that blow air conditioning from the like. I just got this old cloth interior car, and my daughter spilled her sippy cup, and there's a stain I can't get out, and the front left speaker's blown, and it just I'd be more content if I had a new car. And see, we really don't even understand what contentment is, because here's what it is. Here's what the word means. I'm okay with it, and I'm okay without it. Do we get that? Like, that's what the word means, contentment. It's this constant spiritual and emotional condition of I'm good. Like, I'm okay with a 60-inch TV. I'd be okay with a 70-inch TV too, especially if someone else buys it for me. But I'm okay with this car I have. I'll be okay when I get a new car, and at some point, I won't be able to drive this one anymore, and something will happen where it's not worth fixing it or whatever. I'll sell it, and I'll trade it in. You'll get this new, and I'm okay with this car. I'll be okay when I get the new car. Contentment is not having everything we want. That's ridiculous. You'll never reach that status. Contentment is being okay with what we have. And see, here's where it comes together. When our goal in gaining riches, when we flip this thinking in our brain, where our goal in getting more money is giving more away, when that's the goal and the purpose for acquiring wealth, when we buy into this, what God says about it, our desires and emotions don't control us anymore with money. Greed doesn't control us. Because we begin to realize when I get more money, it's not really about me anyway. Ultimate purpose is giving more away. So selfishness and greed continues to die inside of us. Worry starts to diminish because greed causes worry. That's another message for another day. But we're not clamoring for more and more and more. We're in this state of financial contentment. Margin becomes a reality maybe for the first time in our lives. We're okay with what we have. If we get more, we get more. But with the goal of giving it away, our desires and emotions don't control us with money. And see, at some point in life, we've got to just make the decision. Like, has God allowed me to have more to acquire wealth so I can have more or give more? Like, what's the ultimate purpose of the resources God has given me? Which that decision is really a decision between living a stressed, anxious, dissatisfied life or living a life of contentment. Look at what that same guy that wrote the letter to the Corinthian church, he says this to this young pastor that he's mentoring about wealth. He says in 1 Timothy 6, true godliness with contentment is itself great wealth. After all, we brought nothing with us when we came into the world. We can't take anything with us when we leave. So if we have enough food and clothing, let's say the word, content. Let's say it one more time, content. Like, what if we started to think, like, you know what? More money, more stuff, that's not really wealth. More contentment. That's really wealth. I mean, that's what I'm really after. That's why I want the more stuff because I think that's where it's found. Let's show you a couple more verses from the same author. Paul says this, and he's actually writing this from prison. He says, I've learned how to be content with whatever I have. I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I've learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it's with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little. He's saying there's a way to be content with nothing or with everything, because it's not about how much you have. I'm okay with it. I'm okay without it. And how do we learn this? Because it's a learned thing, right? I love that word there. We have to flip the switch. We have to learn this. It's not natural. How do we learn this? It's the secret of giving some away, of being generous. Because ultimately, contentment, satisfaction, happiness, that's what we're after. And that's why we buy more stuff, because we think the stuff brings contentment. That's not the outcome. Those things don't come by having more. Yes, momentarily, very momentarily usually. But the condition of contentment is not found in having more. It's found in giving more away. Now, I shared a little bit about our newlywed adulting story earlier. And I'm so thrilled to share today that God has revolutionized our view on money and stuff. And now we're more intentional with generosity than anything else in our budget. At the end of each year, what we decide, like we sit down, we kind of create the budget for the next year. And the first thing we ask, my wife and I, is how much do we want to give away next year? And then things revolve around that. That's the number one thing. And listen, church planting has really helped us see money and generosity differently. Because you're going to see this as being part of the ground floor of Bridgeway getting launched. You get a front row seat to see all that God can do through your generosity as a church community. And it really helps. It really helps that motivation factor behind generosity. And just through the practice of generosity, God has infused us. I would describe it like this. He's infused our family with supernatural self-control. It's not in us. It's in God through us that we're able to do this. Not that I'm not tempted. Not that I'm not tempted with the Lexus commercials around Christmas time with the giant bow. There's something about that giant bow that just it just feels like there's something to that Lexus. Right? Or not that I'm tempted with getting a Home Depot card tomorrow and remodeling the bathroom tomorrow, 6 months, same as cash again. Not that I don't want a new MacBook Pro because mine's 7 years old and every time I want a Zoom call and use the webcam, I have to restart it because the webcam doesn't work again. So there is this struggle still. But I'm content. Like there's this inner contentment with the way we're living now. So maybe you're here thinking, like, you know what? This is making a little bit of sense. Like a pastor talking about money. It's actually making a little bit of sense. It's kind of weird. But listen, I don't want to just make a good point today. I want us to live this out. I hope that Bridgeway Church lives this out. Because I have a dream for Bridgeway Church. It's the same dream I have for Revolution Church. It's the same dream God had for the church when he started it 2,000 years ago. And again, he inspired this guy that was starting many churches in the first century to say, he challenges this church in Corinth. One more verse for us. Since you excel in so many ways, in your faith, your gifted speakers, your knowledge, your enthusiasm, and your love from us, I want you to excel also in the gracious act of giving. Like, I want Bridgeway Church, imagine, to be known for generosity. Because everything else in this verse, I know Bridgeway Church is going to be known for this. Like gifted speakers, Joel's a gifted speaker. I've heard him speak. He's come spoke at Revolution. There's going to be other speakers that raise up through the ranks that just gifted speakers is going to be something Bridgeway is known for. Knowledgeable people, I'm sure many of you, knowledgeable people at Bridgeway, enthusiasm, love, faith, all those things. You're going to be known for that. But I want people in Kokomo to be blown away by this group of Christ followers because you're the most generous group of people in Howard County. That you excel in this so that you live a more content life and so that God brings more hope to this community. So I want you to excel in generosity so that you live a more content life and so that more people experience hope in this community. So I just challenge you, take a next step. And Joel's going to talk about this in a minute, but whatever that next step is for you, maybe generosity's never been kind of a part of the rhythm of your finances and you need to be intentional with it. And, have a conversation if you're a married couple or dating couple and what are we going to do about this? Set a percentage on it. We're going to start 3%, 4%, taking this next step of generosity. Maybe you've been living this way for a long time and God's calling you because you're part of this community and God's going to do so much through this to step that percentage up to a more sacrificial level. Or maybe you're here and you're a little upset about this whole topic and you just need to pray, God, is that greed? Is there some greed in me? And if there is, reveal it and give me the courage to deal with it your way. So I'm going to just pray that whatever that next step is, that we would take it. So God, right now, let this not just be something like an aha moment. Let this be a walk it out kind of moment. So I pray you would right now in this time meet every single individual with every single different financial picture in this room. Meet them right where they're at and show them that exact next step that's going to honor you. It's going to bring more contentment to their life, and it's going to change others' lives because of what you're doing in their finances. So, God, I just pray this in your name. Amen.